Computer, display the new recruit manifest, Drill Sergeant Kaz Thor commanded, his forearms crossing in frustration as he stood in his office at the elite Galactic Military Academy. The holographic display flickered to life, casting a soft blue glow across his scaled face. What in the 7 moons of Xylax is a human? The morning sun of Centauri Prime cast long shadows across the pristine training grounds of the Academy, its 3 suns creating an impressive light show that typically left new recruits gawking. Not that Kaz Thor cared much for theatrics. After 47 cycles of training the galaxy's finest warriors, he'd seen it all. Or so he thought. Sir Lieutenant Parthax burst through the door, all 6 of her eyes wide with excitement. The transport ship carrying the new recruits has landed. But sir, there. Spit it out, Lieutenant. We're the elite Galactic Military Academy, not some backwater communication school. They're walking around in standard gravity like it's nothing. The humans, sir. They didn't even activate their personal gravity adjusters. Kaz Thor's scales shifted from their usual professional green to a concerned purple. Impossible. We keep the landing pad at 2.3 standard gravity to weed out the weak ones. Pushing past his lieutenant, Kaz Thor marched to the observation deck. Below, 3 figures strolled across the landing pad, carrying their gear like it was filled with feathers instead of the regulation 50 kilos of equipment. "Oh, look at that view," one of the humans exclaimed, pointing at the triple sunrise. "Hey Marcus, grab a holopic for my mom." Kaz Thor's jaw dropped as one of the humans casually lifted their 50-kilo pack with one arm to get a better angle for the picture. Around him, other instructors gathered, their dismissive chuckles barely masking their unease. Commander Vextral, his exoskeleton gleaming in the morning light, clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Don't tell me you're worried about these soft-skinned creatures, Kaz Thor. They look like they'd snap in a light breeze." "We'll see who's snapping," Kaz Thor muttered, watching as one of the humans helped an Arxidian cadet who had collapsed under the gravity. The human lifted the crystalline being with casual ease, not even breaking a sweat. Right then Kaz Thor announced to his fellow instructors, trying to maintain his authoritative demeanor. "These humans want to join the elite. Fine. We'll start them on the beginner's course. You know, the one that hospitalized those Chronaxian warriors last week." The other instructors chittered in approval, but Kaz Thor couldn't shake an unsettling feeling in his gut. As he watched the humans below start doing what they called stretches, contorting their bodies in ways that made even the flexible Serpentians wince, he had a nagging suspicion that this batch of recruits was going to be different. Sir Lieutenant Parthax interrupted his thoughts. "Should I activate the medical bay's emergency protocols, just in case?" "Activate them," Kaz Thor nodded, his scales now shifting to an anxious yellow. "But something tells me we're not the ones who'll need them. Listen up, you overpaid playground monitors," Kaz Thor barked, addressing the gathered instructors in the briefing room. The holographic display behind him showed detailed scans of the human recruits, which made absolutely no sense to anyone present. Commander Vextral raised one of his segmented appendages. "Sir, there must be an error in the medical scans. According to this, these creatures have an internal skeleton made of calcium." "That's correct," Senior Medical Officer Nyx Ara chimed in, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with confusion. "And get this, they have only one heart, no backup organs, and their muscles are basically protein strands. They shouldn't even be able to stand up, let alone pass the basic entrance tests." The room erupted in clicks, whistles, and various other alien expressions of disbelief. Lieutenant Parthax pulled up footage from the morning's landing. "Watch this again. The one called Luna Rodriguez. She helped 3 Gravitonian cadets to their feet. Gravitonians weigh 400 kilos each." "Impossible," shouted Instructor Blix, his gelatinous form rippling with skepticism. "My cousin tried to lift a Gravitonian once. They're still regrowing their load-bearing tentacles." Kaz Thor slammed all 4 hands on the briefing table, causing several instructors to jump, float, or temporarily phase out of existence in surprise. "Enough. Whether these humans are breaking physics or not, we have a job to do. And I say we give them the full elite Galactic Military Academy welcome." A series of predatory grins spread across various alien faces, tentacles, and energy fields. I've modified the obstacle course, Kaz Thor continued, bringing up a new hologram. We're combining elements from all environmental extremes. Start with the magma pits of Sector 7, followed by the crushing depth simulation, then the void jump, the one that made those quantum warriors cry last month. Sir Parthax interrupted, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. That's a week-long course. The fastest completion time was 6 days, and that was by a cybernetically enhanced mechazoid. Exactly, Kaz Thor's scales rippled with smug satisfaction. Let's see these squishy humans handle that. And just to make it interesting, he pulled out a credit chip, tossing it onto the table. 1,000 credits says they don't make it past the first obstacle. The betting pool exploded faster than a Pyraxian sun dragon's temper. Credit chips flew through the air as instructors called out increasingly outlandish bets. 2,000 credits says they dissolve in the acid rain section called out Blix. 3,000 on total organ failure in the gravity chamber, shouted Vextral. 5,000 says they. Actually, wait, Nick's era paused, studying the medical scans more closely. Are we sure about this? Their endurance readings are off the charts, and their adrenaline response is like nothing I've ever. Getting cold tentacles, Nixara Kaz Thor teased. Come on, what's the worst that could happen? They're barely even considered sentient on the galactic classification scale. Just then, a thunderous boom echoed through the facility, causing several instructors to instinctively activate their defense mechanisms. Parthax rushed to the window. Sir? The humans. They're doing something they call warming up in the 3G training yard. That sound? The one called Kyle Chen just jumped, and when he landed. Impossible, Kaz Thor pushed through the crowd. Below, the 3 humans were performing what appeared to be some kind of ritualistic exercise routine, each impact of their movements leaving small craters in the reinforced training ground. Should we? Maybe lower the gravity, suggested an uncertain voice from the back. Absolutely not, Kaz Thor straightened his posture, trying to ignore the way his scales were shifting to an uncertain mauve. Everything proceeds as planned. The course is set for 0600 tomorrow, and I expect to see all of your credit chips on this table before then. As the instructors filed out, placing their bets with varying degrees of confidence, Kaz Thor found himself staring at the medical scans again. One detail caught his eye, something about humans having evolved on a death world with extreme environmental pressures. He quickly dismissed the thought. After all, how bad could a death world possibly be? He was about to find out. The Triple Suns hadn't even cleared the horizon when Marcus Stone, Luna Rodriguez, and Kyle Chen reported to the course entrance, looking offensively cheerful for such an early hour. Kaz Thor noted with growing unease that they were carrying water bottles and what they called energy bars, as if this were some casual morning exercise rather than the most grueling military challenge in the galaxy. Good morning, Drill Sergeant Luna called out, her dark ponytail swinging as she actually bounced on her toes in the high gravity. Beautiful day for a run, right? This is not a run, Kaz Thor growled, his scales shifting between authoritative green and concerned purple. This is the elite qualification course. The minimum completion time is 6 days. The maximum survival rate is 40%. The current record holder is 6 days, Marcus interrupted, checking something on his primitive wrist device. We've got dinner plans tonight with some Arxidians. Can we maybe speed this up a bit? Behind Kaz Thor, Lieutenant Parthax's 6 eyes all blinked at different rates, a sure sign of stress. Commander Vextral's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a malfunctioning quantum drive. The course begins with the magma pits of Kaz Thor started his standard briefing. Oh sweet, like a hot tub, Kyle grinned, already stretching. Back on Earth, I used to do hot yoga in Death Valley. This'll be great for loosening up the muscles. The observation room above was packed with instructors, all crowded around viewing screens, their betting chips clutched in various appendages. Senior Medical Officer Nixara had insisted on setting up emergency stasis pods, just in case. Begin, Kaz Thor bellowed, trying to maintain some semblance of protocol. What happened next would be talked about in the Academy for cycles to come. Luna took point, sprinting across the magma field using stepping stones that were heated to temperatures that could melt standard-issue boots. She was laughing. The human was actually laughing. "Hey guys, check this out," she began, bouncing from stone to stone in some sort of rhythmic pattern, just like that lava game we used to play as kids. Marcus followed, somehow carrying Kyle on his shoulders. "Efficiency," he shouted up to the observation window. 2 for 1 special. In the control room, alarms began blaring. Sir Parthax's voice cracked. Their body temperatures should be critical, but they're just sweating. They're what Commander Vextral demanded. "It's some kind of natural cooling system," Nyx Era explained, her bioluminescence flickering frantically. "They're releasing water through their skin to regulate their temperature. It's brilliant." The humans reached the crushing depths section in 7 minutes. 7 minutes. The previous record for just the magma pits was 4 hours. "Water pressure simulation engaging," Kaz Thor announced, his voice steady despite his scales now showing a kaleidoscope of worried colors. "Crushing force beginning at 20 atmospheres. "Oh man, this takes me back," Kyle called out as the pressure increased. "Remember that deep-sea training mission, Luna?" "Like a day at the beach," Luna replied, already halfway through the course. Though the Pacific Trench was way deeper than this. Marcus was somehow doing what appeared to be a backstroke through the crushing pressure chamber. You guys ever notice how floaty artificial pressure feels compared to real ocean pressure? In the control room, Instructor Blix had become so agitated that his gelatinous form had split into 3 worried puddles. Parthax was stress molting. Commander Vextral's exoskeleton was developing stress fractures from his constant mandible clicking. "Increase the pressure," Kazthor ordered. "More. More." Sir Parthax's voice was barely a whisper. "We're already at maximum. They're treating it like a swimming pool." The humans cleared the crushing depths in 12 minutes, emerging on the other side, not gasping for air as every other species did, but comparing their times like it was some sort of game. Then came the void jump, a section of complete nothingness that had to be crossed using only spatial awareness and gravity manipulation. "Watch this," Kyle shouted, then proceeded to do what the humans called a cannonball into the void. The laws of physics took a moment to consider this, seemed to shrug, and let him bounce through space like it was a trampoline. Luna pulled out a small device. "Anyone want to listen to some music while we void hop?" I made a playlist. Marcus was already calculating trajectories in his head. "If we time our jumps right, we can use each other's gravitational wake to slingshot through this whole section." Basic orbital mechanics, really. In the control room, Kaz Thor watched as his career, his understanding of the universe, and his substantial betting pool investment all circled the drain. The humans weren't just surviving the course, they were treating it like an amusement park. Sir Parthax approached cautiously, holding a data pad. They're on pace to finish the entire course in under an hour." "Impossible," Kaz Thor whispered, but he was running out of conviction. His scales had settled into a solid shade of disbelieving white. "Also, sir, they're asking if we have any more challenging courses. They say this one's fun, but a bit basic." Through the observation window, they watched as the 3 humans linked arms and began what appeared to be a synchronized void dance routine, complete with humming something they called Space Oddity. Somewhere in the back of the control room, someone started crying. Nobody looked to see who it was. They were all too busy watching their understanding of the universe crumble before 3 dancing deathworlders who thought crushing pressure was relaxing and magma was a bit warm, but not too bad. The galaxy, Kaz Thor realized, was not ready for humans. Not ready at all. Are they? Are they having a picnic? Commander Vextral's mandibles went completely still, a sign of severe shock, as he watched the surveillance feed of the quantum maze section. Indeed, Luna Rodriguez had called for a quick snack break in the middle of a zone specifically designed to phase matter in and out of reality. She was casually unwrapping something called a protein bar while her molecules randomly shifted between dimensions. "I brought extra if anyone's hungry," she called up to the observation deck, seemingly unaware that she was currently existing in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Thor's mind flashed back to the Trilaxian elite squad's attempt at this same section 3 cycles ago. It had taken their scientists 2 months to reassemble the soldiers from the quantum foam. And now here was Kyle Chen using the quantum fluctuations to juggle. Check it out, Kyle called out, tossing small objects through dimensional rifts. If you time it right, you can pass stuff between quantum states. Anyone want to play catch across dimensions? In the observation deck, Senior Medical Officer Nick Zara was frantically comparing readings from previous course attempts to the current situation. Last year, a mechazoid tried to analyze the quantum field. Their central processor melted. These humans are. They're not even using equipment. They're doing it by, what did they call it? Eyeballing it. Through another monitor, they watched Marcus Stone approach the psychic suppression chamber, a room that had once reduced a hive mind collective to traumatized silence. He casually strolled in, whistling something called Walking on Sunshine. Hey, he called back, this is like that meditation retreat I went to in Nepal. Really helps clear the head. Lieutenant Parthax, who had been reviewing historical footage, clicked through failure after failure on her datapad. The Chronaxian warriors, considered the galaxy's finest soldiers, collapsed at the entrance of the magma pits. Current status: Luna using a magma pool to heat up something called coffee. The quantum warriors of Helix Prime trapped in time loops for 3 weeks. Current status: Kyle teaching other recruits how to surf temporal waves. The Void Dancers of Nebula 6 lost in space-time for 2 months. Current status: Marcus mapping a shortcut through the 11th dimension. Sir, a junior instructor burst into the control room, their crystalline form vibrating with panic. The other recruits, they're following the humans. The monitors showed the impossible. An Arxidian cadet, inspired by Luna's casual defiance of physics, was attempting to skateboard across the quantum foam. A young Gravitonian, watching Kyle's dimensional juggling act, was trying to learn what the humans called hacky sack, with collapsed neutron stars. This is unprecedented, Commander Vextrol whispered, his exoskeleton now covered in stress fractures. They're not just completing the course, they're revolutionizing how it's approached. In the antimatter chamber, designed to test a candidate's response to certain death scenarios, Luna had started a game of the floor is lava, ironic, given they'd treated actual lava like a kiddie pool earlier. You're all doing great, she encouraged a group of nervous cadets. Just remember, antimatter is just like regular matter but spicier. Meanwhile, Kyle had discovered that the gravity inversion field could be used to perform what he called zero-G breakdancing. He was now teaching a class of amazed alien cadets how to windmill in fluctuating gravitational fields. Remember, he instructed a floating group of various species. The key is to work with the gravity shifts, not against them. It's just like that time at the lunar nightclub. Thor watched in silent horror as Marcus approached the psychological warfare section, a chamber that projected one's worst fears. The last hive mind that entered was still in therapy. Marcus walked out 5 minutes later. Pretty neat special effects in there, he commented. Reminded me of that haunted house I worked at during college. Though the existential dread could use some work, maybe add some student loan debt collectors. In the control room, the betting pool lay forgotten. Several instructors had entered a catatonic state. Instructor Blix had evaporated from pure shock and was slowly condensing on the ceiling. Sir Parthax approached Thor, who hadn't moved for 20 minutes. I've been doing some research on their home planet, Earth. It appears to be what ancient texts call a death world. Explained. Thor managed, his scales now a shade of bewildered gray previously unknown to his species. Well, sir, they evolved on a heavy gravity world with extreme temperature variations, constant exposure to radiation, toxic elements in their atmosphere, aggressive megafauna, and they drink liquid stimulants for fun. Through the monitors, they watched as Luna shared some of this coffee with a group of cadets. An ethereal being temporarily gained physical form from the caffeine shock. They don't just survive adversity, Parthax continued, her voice filled with wonder. They turn it into entertainment. The more dangerous something is, the more fun they have. Thor finished, finally understanding. They're not completing the course. They're playing with it. As if to emphasize his point, Kyle's voice came through the speakers, "Hey, who wants to see me do a backflip through this black hole?" The sound of multiple alien instructors fainting was drowned out by the cheers of cadets who, just hours ago, had feared these same obstacles. Now they were learning human concepts like parkour and extreme sports terms that would soon be banned in most civilized sectors of space. The galaxy's deadliest military training course had been transformed into what the humans called a party, and somehow, impossibly, that made it more effective than ever before. Kaz Thor made a mental note to update the recruitment brochure and maybe invest in some of that coffee stuff. He had a feeling he'd need IT. Approaching final section. Total elapsed time 47 minutes and 23 seconds, the Academy's AI announced, its usual monotone voice carrying an unmistakable note of disbelief. That's impossible, Commander Vextral stammered, his exoskeleton now covered in so many stress fractures he looked like a mosaic. The calculation algorithms can't even process completion times under 6 days. The control room had descended into beautiful chaos. Warning lights flashed across every console as the system tried to comprehend what was happening. Instructor Blix, still partially evaporated, was raining down in confused droplets. Lieutenant Parthax's head stress molted so completely she resembled a plucked quantum fowl. Time parameters exceeded. Reality check failing. System reboot required, the AI continued, starting to glitch. Human performance levels cannot be quantified. Does not compute. Does not BZZZT. Compute. On the main screen, Marcus, Luna, and Kyle approached the final obstacle, the infamous reality maze. A test so challenging that 2 previous candidates had emerged speaking in mathematical equations, convinced they were sentient probability waves. "Oh cool, non-Euclidean geometry," Luna exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "Just like that escape room we did in Boston." Warning. Warning, the AI sputtered. Human enthusiasm levels exceeding safety parameters. Joy detected in lethal environments. Error. Kyle was already halfway through the maze, somehow using the warped space-time to perform increasingly complex gymnastics routines. "Hey guys, if you bend reality just right, you can make a half pipe." Critical system failure, the AI announced as Marcus started teaching a group of awestruck alien cadets how to parkour across dimensional barriers. Recreational activity detected in Omega-level hazard zone. Does not compute. Kaz Thor watched in stunned silence as his career, the laws of physics, and several fundamental constants of the universe all simultaneously had nervous breakdowns. Sir Parthax's voice cracked with hysteria. "The humans are. They're rating the obstacles. They're giving them stars like some kind of vacation resort review. Quantum Maze gets 5 stars for creativity." Luna's voice came through the speakers, but only 3 stars for difficulty. Could use more temporal paradoxes. Total course time, the AI attempted to announce before sparking violently. 52 minutes and impossible. Reality integrity compromised. The main computer exploded in a shower of sparks. Secondary systems began failing as the facility's entire computational network attempted to process the absurdity of what it was witnessing. Emergency lights strobed wildly, creating what Kyle enthusiastically called a pretty sweet rave setup. "Perfect timing," Marcus called out as they reached the finish line. "Luna, didn't you say those Arxidians wanted to meet for dinner at 07000?" The control room erupted into total pandemonium. 3 instructors' phase shifted into alternate dimensions from pure shock. Commander Vextral's mandibles had clicked so fast they created a temporary sonic boom. Senior Medical Officer Nix Ara's bioluminescence was flashing through colors previously unknown to science. Sir Parthax approached Kaz Thor, who hadn't moved or changed color for several minutes. Should we fail them for breaking reality?" Before Kaz Thor could answer, Luna's voice came through the still-functioning speakers. "Hey, that was a great warm-up. What else you got?" Warm. Up, Kaz Thor's scales shifted to a shade of existential crisis that had no name in any known language. Through the observation window, they watched as the 3 humans began teaching their new alien friends something called crowd surfing using the anti-gravity fields. The reality maze had been repurposed into what they called a dance floor. and someone had figured out how to use quantum fluctuations to create something called sick beats. The elite Galactic Military Academy pride of the Confederation, forger of the galaxy's greatest warriors, had just been transformed into what the humans called a party spot. And somehow, impossibly, the new recruits were learning more about handling extreme conditions than they had in centuries of traditional training. Parthax Kaz-Thor finally spoke, his voice distant. Update the course description. Add a warning label: caution, humans may find this entertaining. The betting pool credits lay forgotten on the floor, much like the instructor's understanding of reality itself. 1 week later. Kaz-Thor stared at the pile of transfer requests on his desk, each one bearing variations of the same reason: excessive exposure to human teaching methods hazardous to conventional understanding of reality. The latest memo from High Command didn't help his scales settle into any comfortable color. Notice all training facilities must now include fun warning labels on lethal obstacles. Addendum: coffee is hereby classified as a controlled substance. Further addendum: parkour is not an acceptable emergency evacuation method. Sir Lieutenant Parthax entered, her new exoskeleton still shiny after her stress molting incident. The humans have submitted their suggestions for course improvements. Let me guess, Kaz-Thor sighed. They want more lava. Actually, they've designed an entire extreme sports curriculum. Also, Marcus Stone is teaching something called quantum Zumba in the reality maze every third cycle. Through the window, Kaz-Thor watched Luna Rodriguez leading a survival skills class that looked suspiciously like a beach party in the crushing depths chamber. Kyle Chen had somehow turned the antimatter arena into what he called a skate park, complete with half-pipes made of warped space-time. The graduation rate has increased 400%, Parthax continued, checking her datapad. Though we've had to add a new rule about not using black holes as slip-end slides. The betting pool had been permanently suspended after several instructors attempted to calculate the odds of human survival and caused 3 quantum computers to achieve sentience and immediately resign in protest. Commander Vextral poked his head in, his new exoskeleton reinforced against stress fractures. The humans want to know if we can add something called a zip line through the void jump section. Approved, Kaz-Thor said wearily. Just make sure they don't turn it into another dance party. Too late, sir. They're calling it 0G ziplining with zesty zeitgeist Zumba. Kaz-Thor looked at his own transfer request, still unsigned on his desk. Next to it lay a brochure for a relaxing posting on a nice, boring space station far from any human influence. Then he made the mistake of checking the new recruitment numbers. Applications had increased by 1,000%. Apparently, word had spread that the galaxy's deadliest military training facility was now, in human terms, totally awesome. Sir Parthax interrupted his thoughts. The humans are requesting permission to organize something called a quantum rave for graduation day. Kaz-Thor's scales cycled through every known color before settling on a shade that could only be described as resignation with a touch of amusement. He crumpled up his transfer request and tossed it into the quantum paper shredder, which actually giggled as it phased the paper out of existence. Permission granted, he said, reaching for the bottle of headache medication that had become standard issue for all instructors dealing with humans. But remind them no coffee in the reality maze. We're still trying to get last week's aerial being down from the ceiling.